And now we'll move to House Bill 1171, Baltimore County Speed Monitoring Systems, Residential Districts. This is a bill brought forward by Delegate Guyton. Delegate Guyton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, wonderful colleagues on the Baltimore County delegation. I come before you this morning to ask for your favorable support of House Bill 1171, also a good number. This bill simply transfers the authority to decide when and where speed monitoring devices, and we usually refer to them as speed cameras, can be placed in residential areas in Baltimore County. So currently, for the newer members, Baltimore County has to bring expansion or change in the placement of speed cameras to the state legislature for statutory approval. So this bill enables Baltimore County government to authorize speed cameras without the consent or intervention of the General Assembly. If they choose to do so, it's enabling to protect the safety of our constituents. Montgomery County and Prince George's County have already made these changes. They passed these bills last year, and other counties are following to provide more local control in these decisions. So this bill is being supported by over 42 community associations in all of our districts because speed cameras really do work to slow people down and make our communities safer. So I did ask Justin to just put up that list, if he could, of community associations. If you have screen sharing abilities there. Right, so there's somebody in all of our districts, and these folks represent a lot of our constituents who are really behind this change in authority. I am also going to ask you if you could, just to show an example of how speed cameras really do slow people down. You have a couple of maps to throw up there. Whichever one you have first is fine. What you're seeing on the next slide that hopefully we'll get. Perfect. So this is on Middle River Road, right? In front of Middle River Middle School. And all of these blue dots are actual infractions for speeding that have happened. And you can see on all of these slides that right in front of the star, which is where the speed cameras are placed, there is a huge decrease in speeding infractions, right? As soon as people are out of that range, and I'm pointing at it like you can see me, but as soon as people are out of that range, you can see that the people speed up and start getting tickets again. So they really work. Here's another example on Trap Road in Dundalk, where there are actually no tickets right in front of that speed camera. But as soon as you get out of range, people start speeding crazily again. What's the next one there? I just have a couple of these in our different districts. This one's in my district, Kenilworth Avenue. And look right where the speed camera is, which is in front of Carver High School. No infractions, but all around that area, speeding is a huge problem. And then I think we have one more. Right, so this one's in Lansdowne. You can see the same effect. A lot of out of control speeding all around the speed camera, but not right in front of it. So this demonstrates the effect that these speed cameras really do have in changing behavior of drivers who are dangerous to our communities. So I'm going to turn this hearing over to my panel to make the case for this change in statute if I have been unable to do so. And I request a favorable report on House Bill 1171. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Delegate Guyton. I see a number of questions. We're going to go ahead and let the witnesses testify first, and then if the questions apply to either the sponsor or the panel, they can answer as they see fit. So I want to remind the witnesses that we have 2 minutes to testify. We're going to go in the order that they signed up. And so first I have Jeffrey Myers. Jeffrey Myers represents the Pot Spring Community Association. Mr. Myers, if you would give us 2 minutes, please.
Yes, thank you for your time this morning. I'm Jeff Myers, president of the Pot Spring Community Association in Timonium. The association supports the bill and urges you to vote in its favor. Yesterday, I submitted a hard copy of my written testimony, and I know you don't want to hear me read that aloud, so I'm just going to focus on one part of the important stuff that I mentioned in the written testimony, and that's the data that's out there that supports this bill. Montgomery County has had this ability to place speed cameras in residential zones since 2007. In 2012, it began to use the cameras in what's called a corridor approach. They don't keep the cameras in one location permanently. They move them around up and down a designated corridor. A study was then conducted to evaluate the effectiveness of the program on travel speeds, public sentiment, and crashes. The study evaluated over 7 years of data and used nearby counties in Virginia as controls. The study found that the speed camera program was associated with a 62% reduction in the likelihood that a vehicle was traveling more than 10 miles per hour above the speed limit. There was a 39% reduction in the likelihood that a crash resulted in an incapacitating or fatal injury. And a survey of drivers in Montgomery County found that 95% of them were aware of the program and 62% of them favored the program, even though they or a friend of theirs had received a ticket from one of the speed cameras. So while people can get a little hot under the collar about this issue, the objective data demonstrates that it makes sense. Simply put, we need the camera program because we cannot afford the number of police officers that would be needed to enforce the speed limits on our residential roads throughout the county. We ask for a favorable report on this bill. Thank you.
And I thank you. Next, we have Heather Patty from the White Marsh Convention. I think it's Convention and Community Association, White Marsh.
Hi, good morning. My name is Heather Patty, and I represent the White Marsh Cowanton Community Association. We represent about 2,500 residents in northeastern Baltimore County, and I am speaking in support of this bill. Originally, I have always been very opposed to speed cameras, basically because you don't have the right to speak with an officer. But in recent years, I have become a proponent, and I was surprised because I did a survey of my community just to see kind of a feel of the residents. And I was very surprised because it came back 3-1 in favor of speed cameras in residential areas. Basically for 3 main reasons. One, because there obviously is a significant staffing issue in Baltimore County with police. We're about 200 officers down. So there is basically, at least in our area, no traffic enforcement happening. Many residents are reporting that speed bumps are ineffective in their areas, that they only slow down the people that are driving cautiously anyway, that a lot of people speed over them anyway, and that they do damage to their vehicles. Personally, I believe that speed cameras might actually prevent the need for these costly traffic circles that seem to be needed everywhere, because as Delegate Guyton said, that they actually seem to be slowing traffic down. So I just wanted to read, I was going to read a few of the residents' comments, but I didn't know we only had 2 minutes. So this was a really good comment that someone left. They said, briefly, speed bumps penalize every driver, whereas cameras only penalize the offenders. It is wrong to penalize everyone during every trip they make for the next 10 years. The fire department does not like speed bumps. Fire trucks and EMS ambulances must slow down dramatically at speed bumps. This is not a good thing. For fire, minutes matter, and for medical emergencies, seconds count. Speed cameras are an excellent deterrent and fine only those who are in violation. So,
okay. Ms. Patty, if you could summarize, please.
I'm going to do that right now. So in White Marsh, we had a resident killed getting mail out of her mailbox in 2018. And in Lutherville, a grandmother and her granddaughter were killed. I'm
going to ask you, you're over 2 minutes. And if you could just summarize, we get it. Thank you very much.
So we support this bill to allow speed cameers.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm sorry you weren't made aware of the 2 minutes.
That's fine. I'm sorry if I went over.
That's no worry. It's a guideline. We work the best we can within it. Next, we have Eric Rockwell. He's speaking for himself. He is the vice president of the Timonian Community Council, but he is speaking for himself. Mr. Rockwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the delegation. Just to put a couple points on information already disseminated, Mr. Myers spoke about some of those statistics that demonstrate that in Montgomery County, speeds were reduced after this law was implemented. That study was conducted by the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety based in Arlington, Virginia. I would only add that communities throughout the greater Timonium area have seen a problem with speed, particularly proliferate over the last 10 years or so. As the lady just before me mentioned, we lost a grandmother and grandchild who were walking on a public sidewalk due to speed and some other contributing factors from a driver who was impaired. We've had a situation on Pot Spring Road where a vehicle left the roadway, ended up in someone's rear yard. Heaven forbid that the vehicle would have gone a little further, would have crashed into the house. Again, I would urge the delegation to support this bill, and thank you for the time.
And I thank you very much for your testimony. Next, we have Susan Williams from the Pine Ridge Association. 2 minutes, please.
Yes, I'm the co-president of the Pine Ridge Association, which is in the Pikesville area. We have a particular problem on Old Court Road between Reisterstown and the metro station. We're graciously asking for you to support this legislation because it works. It reduces the need for our valuable police officers to be monitoring traffic when they could be doing something else. And I have a professional background in planning and transportation. Most of the roads where these people are speeding are designed as collectors, which carry more traffic and may be designed as a wider street. They are usually posted for 35 to 40 miles an hour, and people are generally going 50 to 60 on them. The speed is important to keep in check because if you read most traffic safety manuals, 37.5 miles an hour is the breaking point between where you get relatively minor injuries and major injuries or death of a pedestrian. So keeping these speeds down to where they're supposed to be at 35 or 40 is really critical to public safety. Thank you very much.
And thank you. I appreciate your brevity. Finally, we have Jason Taylor from the Marymount Neighborhood Improvement Association. Mr. Taylor.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this subject. Appreciate Delegate Guyton for the sponsorship of this bill, and I hope and Adrian Jones as well. I'm from District 10, from Marymount Neighborhood Improvement Association, and it's right off of Liberty Road. And Liberty Road, if you guys aren't familiar with it, is a mess as far as speeding and as far as traffic is concerned right now. There's a serious safety issue with the neighborhoods that are adjacent to Liberty Road, like Marymount, because drivers actually cut through our neighborhood to cut through to go to Roland Road, and Liberty Road is backed up. And some of these drivers are going in excess of speeds of 60 plus miles per hour in residential neighborhoods with our children and our residents and our dogs and pets walking through the neighborhoods. And the residents are very concerned about this. We've tried to get speed bumps, but we don't qualify. Like many neighborhoods don't qualify because they don't get the consistent traffic. And we may get that Saturday traffic when the roads are backed up. We don't get that consistent traffic enough to get the speed humps. So we need this to pass this authorization bill so that we can have the opportunity to at least try to get a speed camera in our neighborhood for a short amount of time or for as long as amount of time as it takes to make our neighborhood safe. And we would appreciate your support on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We're going to go to questions. Questions can be directed at the sponsor, but if we feel like a community member that can answer because it's relevant to their community, we can go to them as well. We'll start with you, Delegate Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Delegate Guyton, thank you for bringing this bill, which I support and I'm a co-sponsor of. Just to confirm, though, that the authorization that Baltimore County would have in being comparable to what Prince George's County and Montgomery County governments have also has the same limitations in that can only get a ticket if you're going 12 miles an hour over the speed limit. Council has to authorize the placement of the speed camera, and there is a 35 and cameras can cannot be put on roads that have higher than 35-mile-per-hour speed limit. Just confirming that all that is correct.
And thank you so much, Delegate Stein. I really appreciate that question. Absolutely. This bill is not changing anything else about that statute. All that it does is shift the authority and enables Baltimore County to make these decisions rather than to come through us every year to make the changes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Stein. Question, Delegate Carden.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Delegate Guyton, for bringing the bill. So first of all, right now, Baltimore County has the authority to choose where to put speed cameras as long as they're within the confines of schools. Is that correct?
Delegate Guyton, you are muted.
You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Delegate Carden. That is true. Am I still muted? I'm sorry.
No,
Thank
we can
that
hear
is
you now.
correct. And actually, I had a similar bill last year to try to expand the definition of school zone to include preschool and nursery schools. That did not make it out. It was a statewide bill and not a delegation bill. So yes, currently it's limited to a very prescribed area around schools. This allows the county to move them around wherever the county feels like they're needed.
With just to be fair, though, I mean, even though this is a good safety bill, the county has the ability to be a little bit more generous with their decision, because I think they can be within like a half a mile of a school. Is that correct? So there's like very little spaces in the county that are not within a half a mile of a school.
Well, I appreciate your concern, and I think that may be true in your district. It's certainly not true in other parts of the district.
Right, I know. In the inner suburban communities, at least, that could be true. Okay, and then the pictures that you showed, which were very illustrative, but they showed exactly. I think the issue is that people slow down where they know predictably they can know that there's a speed camera. So the camera only works for a very small spot. And so if you have semi-permanent fixtures, it's not going to help, quarter of a mile down the road. Wouldn't that be fair to say?
That is fair to say, and I thank you for bringing up that point. What this bill does is allow the county to be creative and innovative in how they use those. And I think we did hear about one program where the monitoring devices are moved around to combat exactly that issue. So this gives them more leeway in how they do that.
Okay, and then last point. So the police already have a mobile, or I think a couple of mobile radar devices that they can actually put up that create unpredictability and actually can be a little bit more. I mean, that's kind of the model that we might want to look at. Is that fair to say?
I'm not sure exactly. Could you explain that a little bit?
So the police have they can do radar. They have a unit where they can just set up a police car with a mobile radar unit, and they can go anywhere they want with that, and basically get people. In fact, their ability to give tickets far exceeds that $40 fine, and only in a 35-mile or less. But the truth of the matter is that kind of system where you don't know where they are can really be effective at making people realize they need to stop speeding everywhere.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you're right about that. They do have that ability. However, there are many instances where we are actually trying to reduce the interaction between constituents and police officers when it's not necessary. I think Baltimore County Police Department is amazing, but we don't want those conflicts when we don't have to have them. And I think the other great point that some of our speakers have made, which I'm sure we would all agree with, is that our Baltimore County Police are actually really busy right now with other things. Do we want them to be spending their time sitting on the side of the road, shooting radar guns at folks? I don't. I'd like for them to be out keeping it safe in different ways. Thank you.
I will just end with, I used to live, I've recently moved off of a thoroughfare that was a straightaway that was a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, and people were going 70 miles an hour. And that's the reason I moved, because it wasn't safe for my children who wanted to play outside. And when I had a police, every so often, a police officer would be there with radar. And it was fantastic. I loved it. And I think that the community loved it because of that. That being said, if this program does go into effect, we should encourage the county to figure out ways to not have it be predictable, so that we get people slowing down everywhere as opposed to just around a radar machine.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's a great idea. I do want to point out, if it's okay, Mr. Chair, that
Sure.
we're not debating whether or not we should or should not have speed monitoring devices. They are legal. What we are debating is who makes the decision when they can be expanded or moved around. This
Right.
bill only changes that authority from us to the county council and to the county, which.
Right, but the county would then be able to decide whether to take it outside of school zones. That's what this is about. Let's be
Okay.
clear about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys are drilling down a little bit, but thank you for the clarification, Delegate Guyton, on that. And thank you for the questions, Delegate Cardin. Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Delegate Guyton, how did you know that I drive so cautiously near my house around Middle River Middle School and Victory Villa Elementary School? I was chuckling a little bit when I saw those schools come up first on the list there. I just have a couple questions, and maybe it's because I'm feeling exceedingly cautious about this topic after some hearings that we had yesterday at our committee, but I wanted some points of clarification. So with respect to the cameras, we're only talking about speed cameras, correct, in this bill, and not with respect to placing cameras on stop signs or anywhere else that someone might have an idea to place a camera.
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay.
And I was part of that hearing as well.
I know you are. I'm just, that's why I'm asking for some clarification. So just two other points of clarification, Mr. Chair, if possible. This would not allow the county authority to institute any sort of aggressive or radical fee structures that would allow someone to look into your income taxes and things like that to adjust fines. Is that correct also?
That is correct. This would not allow that. This does not authorize that.
Okay. And then my other question would be, I assume that all the normal monitoring of these citations still exist here in terms of the review process, who's looking at the fines and if someone actually was speeding and things like that as well?
Absolutely. Everything else stands in effect.
Okay.
I think as a quick follow-up, the fine structure is not variable under this program also, right, Delegate Guyton? Right, okay.
That's correct. Thank you.
Good. I think that was sort of the question. I wasn't sure we got to it.
Yes. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. No, I was just trying to help. Delegate Shalega.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Guyton, so you've assured us that there will be audits. That was, I think, one of Delegate Naraki's questions. I don't see that in the bill. How do we know that to be the case?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. I didn't gather that from Delegate Naraki's question. Audits.
Okay. So audits of the program, you may recall that Baltimore City had just a complete disaster with their speed camera program and had to shut it down. There have been questions about other speed camera programs. So, you know, how do we know that this will be audited to protect motorists from, you know, because this is generally, and maybe you could answer this because I'm making an assumption here. The county hires a company to do this and they get paid per ticket. Is that correct?
I'm sorry.
You're muted.
Thank you, Delegate Saleha. You would think I would know how to do this. So the audit requirement, according to Jeff Myers, is part of the statute. That's not printed in this particular bill. So yes, that's already in place. As to your question about the fee structure for the people who send out the tickets, I don't know that answer. Again, I just want to say we're not changing anything at all in the current statute, other than the fact that every time a community association, and you're hearing from a lot of them, and you have heard it from a lot of them, want the county to consider a speed camera bill, the county doesn't say that's up to the state, go next year and get a bill passed. That's the piece we're trying to avoid.
Well, except for, it's only roads, thank goodness, under 35 miles an hour. But I would, just want all the members of the delegation to understand that it is my understanding that the speed camera ticket program, the speed camera program is put up for an RFP. A company comes in and they do the monitoring and ticketing, and they get paid by how many tickets they collect. So, that's why the audit feature is in there. But my last question would be this. So would you be amenable to putting some kind of some language in the bill to ensure that people whose cars are stolen, they have a stolen license plate, that these speed camera tickets have to be checked against that? I will tell you that my mother-in-law's car was stolen, and I can't tell you how many hours I spent on her behalf straightening out speed camera tickets from Montgomery County to Baltimore County, easy pass fines across the Bay Bridge, which is not part of this bill. But, this is a problem, not just, isolated to me, and car theft is a problem. So it would be good, because these companies are private companies, to be able to ensure that, with this increased number of tickets, which I don't know how many, but it'll probably be a lot, we're not capturing people who shouldn't be captured.
Thank you. You have a lot of great questions, and I'm sorry I didn't know the answer to the first one, but I do now, because Vice Chair Stein just put it in the chat for me. State law actually prohibits companies from doing what you suggest, which is getting paid per ticket, according to Vice Chair Stein. So that's the answer to the first issue you brought up. The second is a great question, and we have been hearing bills to that effect in ENT this year. So I believe that there's a state bill that's looking at that comparison between cars that may be stolen or have the wrong license tag and the correct owner or driver of the car. So I think that's something that is going to be addressed in another bill.
Oh, that's great. I love to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you both. People are putting things in the chat, but I want to point out this is a public meeting. And so we're going to ask you if you have something to offer, that you ask to be recognized, so that the public can hear the commentary and the answers to the questions as well. We're going to go next to Delegate Grammer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a concern that this doesn't actually fix a lot of the problems, especially in my district. I do have a question. I'll explain briefly. So when Baltimore County expanded its program beyond the first 15 cameras, the first camera they put in place was at Eastern Technical High School. I drove past that high school, which is where I live and where I went to school, in the morning, and when school gets out, you're not moving past 10 miles an hour. So, the problem there is that they put it at the top of a hill, and what it actually does is it nails people who might accelerate a little much during the evening. It doesn't actually do anything during school hours. The first example that was cited today was Middle River. I drive that road every single morning driving my son to school.
Delegate Grammer, do you have a question?
Yes, I do, but very briefly.
If you could move to it.
In that example, there are two crossing guards, there are two lights, and there's a left-hand turn into school. So you're not moving on that road. You literally can't speed there. And here's my question. We have so many roads that in my district will have speeding problems, but we'll never get a speeding camera. And if you look at transportation law, what they advise for those roads is that you need to restructure the road. That's why you hear about suggestions like roundabouts or speed bumps. My question is, what does Baltimore County do with the funding here? Because when the gentleman says for speed bumps, what he's saying is the county doesn't have enough money. They have to find a way to limit the program, and he doesn't qualify because his traffic numbers don't qualify him as one of the top standing roads. So what does Baltimore County do with the funds they get from speed cameras?
Thank you, Delegate Grammer. And I'm going to be honest that I do not know exactly where that money goes. I've been on A&T for 3 weeks, but I'm sure I'll know by the end of the session. I'll get back to you.
Stand by, stand by,
would you-
stand by, excuse me.
Would you-
Delegate Graham, if you hold on for a second.
Yes.
Maybe we have somebody from the county who can tell us that. I know that Jenny Osa is online, and maybe she'd like to tell us if she knows. There's more likely she'll have an idea, or Amanda
Oh, yeah.
Carr.
Sure.
Maybe I don't have them on my primary screen here. Or maybe we caught them off guard. There's Amanda.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I think
I kind
Amanda
of caught
may
you off
be,
guard. Sorry about that. That's okay.
no worries. I think Amanda may be able to address this.
I do not actually have the exact funding, where the funding goes, but I will get that and send it to the group today.
Suffice it to say, the county collects it. It goes to some county fund.
I believe that it does not put it towards speed bumps. And my
Okay.
final question is, would you be open to an amendment that limited the intake funds to speed bumps so that everybody can get a solution?
Thank you, Delegate Grammer. This bill, I believe that is outside the scope of this bill. So while I don't want to say no to any amendment out loud, obviously this will be, there are subcommittees who can work on that. I don't feel like that is within the scope of this bill. And I also believe that that's very prescriptive on the county, when what we're trying to do right now is just allow them to have another tool in their toolbox along with speed bumps or whatever they deem is best at remedying this problem in our communities. And this is just another one of those. So I think that's outside the scope and a little anti-intuitive for this particular legislation, but that's just my opinion.
And thank you, Delegate Guyton, for that. Hold on. Thank you for that, Delegate Guyton. Delegate Grammer, of course, once this bill comes into our hands, you're welcome to have an amendment drafted and offer it next week or the week after when we get to voting on it. So if you want to chat with some folks about whether that's a good idea or not, I think the sponsor has expressed her opinion. We're going to move on to Delegate, we'll call him Vice Chair Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess this would be a question for the county. Are there any guidelines to where these cameras are put in a particular area and or a community? And I just asked that question because it seems like in other jurisdictions, these cameras are heavily in some communities versus others. So will the county have any guidelines in terms of where these cameras are put?
So the question isn't for the current, because we've established that. So I think the question is, if I understand correctly, has the county discussed where they might place them yet? And either Jen or Amanda, if you'd like to answer for us on that.
Sure, I'll jump in. I know that there have been discussions about this. The nature of them and the extent have not been made public, but I know that we will have policies surrounding it, and I'm sure we would welcome your input.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mr. Vice Chair, right now, the police department utilizes the information they get from a variety of sources to place cameras within the current parameters. So within a certain distance of school zones. What we do know is that the police department does get additional requests from communities, both those adjacent to schools and others. And that we don't, well, unfortunately, right now, we don't have enough cameras and equipment to cover even the current number of school zones that are authorized.
If I may follow up, Mr. Chair. So, Ms. Iosa, it was the sponsor's testimony that the county would be able to put these anywhere they like. So, and that's why I'm asking the question. So they would be outside of school zones is how I take it.
Yes, sir. So my understanding is that under this legislation, the county council would have the ability to determine where they would want to see a camera system deployed. And so it could be outside of the current, I believe, half-mile radius, which is what we're currently restricted to.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now I see 3 more hands up, and I think we're going to limit to that. We've had a robust discussion already on this. I will tell you that my crack staff says that there are expenses involved with speed cameras, but the money that remains after expenses for running them and contracting for them, a lot of it goes to forensic services positions and to help fund speed camera, body-worn cameras. So that's initially, I'm sure there's more detailed information, but it gives a sense to the answer to that question. And good work, Katie Malone. Now we come to Delegate Sheila Ruth.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate Guyton, for this bill. Speeding is, a huge problem everywhere, including even on my own street, and definitely something that we need to address. I just there's been so many great questions, and I just wanted to I had a couple points relating to a couple of the questions. To Delegate Shalega's point about the contractors sending out the tickets, under the current speed camera law, every ticket has to be signed by law enforcement, even though there's a contractor that's running the program. That was my understanding, is that was part of the agreement when the speed cameras were initially authorized, that law enforcement would have to sign off on those. And to Delegate Grammer's point about the use of the funds, when my committee is the one that authorizes when people come and they want to put a camera in a specific location. And we do usually in those cases like to see that money above cost is being used to address whatever issue is causing the problem at that particular location, although I don't believe that's a part of the law. And I did also want to just echo Delegate Jackson's concerns about equity in placement of these cameras. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll treat that as sort of a question there, Delegate
Oh,
Guyton.
isn't that so?
So maybe Delegate Guyton would like to respond to that, since you're questioning whether they would be equitably done. So we'll
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Delegate Ruth. I always love your questions. I think in response and to both of those questions from you and from Delegate Jackson, I'm just going to reiterate my trust in the county. It was already expressed by Ms. Carr that the county would make appropriate regulations surrounding this. This is really, again, not expanding cameras, not asking them to put more in, but giving them the leeway to move them around if they choose to do so, and to decide based on what our communities want in a speedy manner if one needs to be moved around to a different area. So that's really the extent of this bill, but I also trust that they will keep equity in mind and that they will make appropriate regulations for that. So thank you. We have to keep it top of mind. Absolutely.
Thank you, Delegate. Okay, Delegate Long, a question, please.
Hello?
We're here. We're waiting for your question, Delegate Long. Okay, I see he doesn't have his camera on, so I'm assuming he's experiencing some technical difficulties. So we're going to pass. We'll come back to him. Let's go to Delegate Bhandari.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is to Baltimore County government. Do we have an infrastructure to implement this legislation if enacted into law? And what is the county position here?
So thank you for the question, Delegate. So the county has taken no position on this particular bill. I'm not entirely certain what you mean when you say infrastructure. Our police department does have the ability to implement the current law to manage and monitor the cameras, that we currently have. If this law were to pass, then we would have to allocate additional resources to the extent that we could to either deploy additional cameras or to move the existing cameras that we currently have based on decision making that the council would be empowered to make. So there's a lot of what ifs, I think, without knowing what proposals would move before our council, but we would certainly implement the law to the best of our ability based on the council decision making.
Okay, and I see the sponsor would like to augment that answer.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. Again, I just want to clarify, this bill is not requiring Baltimore County to spend any more money or to put any more cameras anywhere unless they decide to do so. So I just want to make sure that that's very, very clear, that we're trying to be less prescriptive and give them more local control with this legislation.
And to that end, generally, we're always very interested if legislation we're presenting is mandated or enabling, and this would be clearly classified as enabling legislation, which is often quite much more palatable. I see, Delegate Long, your hand is down. But maybe that's a glitch. So I'm going to wait for a second to see if you want to come online and ask your question. I don't know if I have to listen to the Jeopardy tune come to an end before I don't wait any longer, but I don't have him here. So if you do have a question, I hope that you'll be able to ask the sponsor offline when the time comes. Certainly there will be a subcommittee hearing on this, and this bill will be brought back before us for a vote. So there'll be ample time to ask questions and help you make decisions on how you feel about it. Delegate Guyton, thank you. That ends the hearing on House Bill 1171.